hearts, our mind, and our soul, all that belongs to you, which is everything that we have. And we pray, Abba, that as Bill continues on with the Midrash this afternoon, that you would just wipe away any cobwebs that might be there from all the carbs or anything else that might be there, and give us all clarity. Help us to stay focused on you on your wonderful day. For it's in Yeshua's name that we are thankful that for the Shabbat. Amen.
Don't go anywhere.
So a little birdie told me that Mr. Toes here has a birthday tomorrow. We have Brother Bibb, who I don't see in the house right now, and now we have Mr. Toes. Okay, who else has a birthday? Up, come on. Miss Holstein, come on up.
No smiling. Do not smile.
Who else has a birthday? Where? Ryan, come on up. All right, who else? Who else has a birthday? Come on, y'all, out them. What's going on out there? Y'all usually outing them like crazy. Where are all the birthday people? Nobody else? It was a quiet month, huh?
All right, thank you. I'll take it from here. I just wanted to see who else we can get up here that we haven't heard sing. What do you think? What do you think Kurt's singing voice is like? Should we find out? Come on, Kurt. Come on. At least Jenna's not here to witness all of this, right?
She was.
Will you lead us in singing happy birthday to these gentlemen and that young lady down there?
Just give me a C, whatever that is.
See.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear, bless you. Happy birthday to you. Amen.
Actually, you did really good. A lot better than I was thinking. Happy birthday, guys. I appreciate it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and dismiss into our classes. So I'm looking for Miss So Miss Erin and Miss Katie, you're going to take the treasures. So 5 through 9. Follow these ladies over here. So 5 through 9, you are dismissed. Okay, stand by then. Junior Quiver, 10 through 13. Gather around General Pernack. Don't knock him down, but gather around him. And you guys are going to be dismissed. And then we're very happy that Jeremy is with us today, and all the boys. Hopefully soon we'll get to see Carmen. All right, but Senior Quiver, you go over there with General Dahl, and you are going to be dismissed. That's 14 through 18, okay? All right, so as they're dismissing, Beth just reminded me of something we have to do. It's very, very important. We had an email that come in sometime last week, but there is a lady who lives in Oregon. Is that right? Is it Oregon? All right. Anyway, her name is Sharon Bonney, okay? And she turned 80 this past week, and we were told that she always joins us for Shabbat every week for the live stream. So let's just real quick, if you will, stand up, turn around, and let's just wave and tell her happy birthday. So we wanted to just wish her a special happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope your family and friends are there with you. So Shabbat Shalom, Sharon. Okie doke. Okay, all right. So you stand close in case I say something and I shouldn't.
Okay.
again. All right, so this is, I'd referred to Sukkot earlier, and it's come to our attention that maybe we need to make an announcement. All right, so.
First the coffee, then the things.
First the coffee, then the things, yes. All right, so this is more or less for our live stream community. And I typed this all out to read it so that I would hopefully address everything. And for those of you who are here and joining us locally, just bear with me for just a moment. But anyway, I wanted everyone out there in the live stream audience to be aware that unfortunately this year, we are not going to be able to accommodate everyone who wants to come to Sukkot. We have an impossible task of trying to place about 1,000 people in a space that strains to handle 500. And if you were with us last year, you saw some of the strain that we experienced. So that is not to say we're closing it to live stream people. It's just saying that we are going to have more people wanting to come and be there than we can possibly accommodate. So to try to determine how many people we can have from the live stream community, we've initiated the process to determine how many of our locals are planning to stay on site so that we can understand how many spaces we have to offer to the live stream community. When it comes to our live stream community, we try to make everyone feel as part of the family as much as is possible. I would think everybody would understand that nevertheless, there are limits to what we can do from a distance. For example, from time to time, we will have requests for benevolence that originate within our live stream community. And so we want to try to do what we can in those situations. And at the same time, just as if it were local, we have to be good stewards. So we try as best as we know how to vet those different requests that come in from the live stream community. And we have in times been able to do that, and when we've been able to do that, we've been able to meet the needs of those who are in our live stream community. My point is, we try to do the best that we know how and that we can within our power to not only make the live stream community feel part of our family, but to interact as best as we know how. So going back last week, to Shavuot, after we brought our tribal captains up here and we got into the idea that we're going to have different tribes within the larger community, etc. And I meant to say it last week and I just simply forgot about it. A lot of the live stream community was asking, okay, we want to be part of that. So we knew that you would want to, and yes, we intend to incorporate the live stream community into that somehow. However, I want you to understand that first we have to employ that system here. And here locally, we have to try to work out the bugs before we're going to try to take on and tackle the live stream community. So the point is, we have an intention to include you in that. But there's a limit to what we can do from a distance. So we're going to do it here locally first. And when we feel like that's on track and we have things running, then we'll begin to address how we can do this within the live stream community. Did that make sense? All right. So I want you to know that we're not excluding you. We want to include you. It's just a bit more of a challenge to figure out how to do that when we're at a distance. Now, bringing it back to Sukkot. The bottom line is we have limited resources in terms of space. And anybody who's watched that live stream knows that that has been part and parcel of Jacob's tent from day one. Space. A lot of people coming in, not enough space. I'm always reminded every Shabbat of the genie in, probably shouldn't have said that word, don't everybody freak out, in, Aladdin, the Disney Aladdin, he's like, 10,000 years, in the little bitty, itty bitty living space. No. Point is, we have always been limited in space. So when it comes to special events, or if we're in transition from one itty-bitty space to a slightly larger itty-bitty space, we have to rent OCI, all right? Or when we have Shavuot, or when we have Passover and things like that, we have to rent OCI. And a great expense. Even though they've been very good to us, we're very thankful, we're So we appreciate them very much, but it is expensive. But we do that because we want everybody who wants to join us for these feast days. We try our very best to accommodate that. Unfortunately, in this area, there are not a lot of venues that are going to accommodate 800 to 1,000 campers. That's just the way it is. There's not a whole lot of places around that will accommodate 800, 1,000 people sitting in a chair. OCI is one of the very few places in this area that will do that. And again, we're thankful for that. But when it comes to Sukkot, look, I know that some people do Sukkot differently. Some people meet at hotels and resorts, and everybody gets a hotel room, and they have a big auditorium and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we could do that, but I don't want to do that. That, to me, is not Sukkot. And so we choose to do it a little differently. And that's not to disparage people who handle it that other way. It's just to say that there is no venue that we are aware of, and we've been looking for going on 4 years now. There's no venue that's going to handle 1,000 campers, and that's just how it is. So the three campgrounds that we're using, quite frankly, can barely accommodate the 500 that we had last year. And again, if you were with us, you understand what I mean. Was it crowded or no? Yes. Were the bathrooms crowded? Yes. Were the toilets overflowing? Yes. And the garbage and everything. So, thus my statement, we're not going to be able to accommodate everyone who wants to join us for Sukkot. So underscore everyone. That's probably going to be the situation that we face every Sukkot until we secure our own dedicated feast site, which is why, it's still not going to accommodate, 10,000 people or anything like that. But anyway, one of the reasons that we showed you our thoughts, vision, ideas as far as the future is not only a building that will handle everybody, but also a site, a place that we could come that's our own, that we don't have to jump through everybody's hoops, that we could open it up to a lot more people than we can right now. But in the meantime, this is what we're faced with. And there's a reason I'm going through all of this, and everybody, I appreciate your patience, but just bear with me. But in the meantime, while we're kind of limited on where we can have these things, and yet we've got, I'm not exaggerating, 1,000 people who want to come, if not more than that. We don't know how to do that. So we can't do that. So that's one of the reasons that we've invested literally tens of thousands of dollars in equipment and personnel so that we can live stream not only on Shabbat, but all of our Sukkot meetings, because that's the best way we know right now to bring our live stream audience into that. Now, there's some of you who joined us for Sukkot over the last few years. There'll be some this year. My point is that is the best we can do in the current situation. So, said all that to say this. As soon as we know what kind of space we have to offer the live stream community, we're going to let you know. We're not ready to do that just yet, but we will let you know. And I will go ahead and let you know that it will, just like last year, it will be limited, and the space we have will go just like that. There will not be enough space to handle all of the requests. And so I hope that you will try to understand our very challenging situation. We're trying very hard not to have a closed Sukkot. Some congregations say if you're not here locally, you can't come, and they have their reasons for that. And some of the reasons are because when you open it up to folks and you don't know them, interesting things can happen in Sukkot as a result of that. And so we're trying very hard not to have a closed Sukkot, but at the same time protect the integrity of our Sukkot so that we have a peaceful Sukkot, and trying to know as best we can everyone who's going to be there. We can't vet everyone who joins us in the live stream, obviously. So we just do the best we can. And quite frankly, we've had a couple of times that people who come in from out of town they join us from time to time on the live stream, but they don't really understand what we're trying to do completely. They come in and, we've had some disruptions. We've had disruptions from people who are local too, so to be fair. The point is that we're trying to walk a tight wire. I don't know that you can appreciate the situation, but we are walking a tight wire in a lot of things and trying to walk and do it in balance. So all of our live stream folks, we want you to know we do consider you part of our family, and we want to make you a part of this family and bring you in and have you participate with us as much as we possibly can. So we will let you know when at-large registration is going to open up. And I want to put this one little footnote on it. Obtaining an off-site camping spot and then just showing up is not going to work. Registration is going to have to go through us because we had limited space, we have limited resources, and we have to know where everything is and who all's showing up. We unfortunately can't have a Sukkot where people just decide at the last moment to show up. That won't work. So I hope that you'll try to understand where we're coming from. We're doing the best we know how. We have gone to great extent to try to find a different way to do this, but right now, this is where we are. So I know that there was some buzz and some chatter, so I figured I'd go ahead and it was requested to me that I go ahead and say something, so I'm going ahead and saying something. So for all of you local folks, let's just be praying that that the Father will help us do what we need to do here so we can better minister to the folks who would love to be here just like you are, all right? So I hope that is clear and said in the right way, nothing that needs to be corrected.
No. So many people that wanted to be here that they've actually moved here.
Yes, that's true, because some of you that wanted to be here at Sukkot with us just decided to stay. And you're here now. We're very happy about that. Now, thank you. I'm sure that will generate even more comments and questions and things, but that's kind of where we're at right at the moment.
Most of you locals should have gotten an email describing what to expect from us as a code and what we expect from you. One of those that we have asked as nicely as we know how is that you don't come up to staff on Shabbat and say, I'm not going to ask you a question about Sukkot, but I really need to know if I can get this campsite, or I really need to know if I can bring my dog or something like that. Because during the week, your Jacob's Tent staff works very hard. I'm in the middle of it, and with the ladies that are helping me, I'm telling you, our conversation from the time we get up until way past when it's time to be off the clock. Am I telling the truth?
Yes, she is.
He tells me, put it away. I tell the other ladies, let's put it away. But we really are that eager to help you. So we do ask that you would respect the sanctity of the day when we gather for Shabbat, that you don't go up to any of the staff members and say, well, this is the only time I get to see you, because email is open 24/7, and that's the only way we can handle your requests, because they've become so many and we've become so large. So please respect that and let the staff have a peaceful Shabbat. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so sorry we had to go ahead and do that, but this would be, we thought, the better time to try to do that rather than during the worship service. So, and again, all you live stream people, I hope that you hear what we're saying. It's sincere. We're trying to figure out every way we can to accommodate as many as we possibly can. All righty, so with that, we will proceed. And so I don't know, Alan, you're handling the mic? Do you have somebody who already has a question or a comment? Celso, did you have something you wanted to say, sir? I can see it in your eyes. Yes, you want to say something. I can tell. And if you didn't, make up something.
Wow. Hey, Bill.
How are you doing?
Missing our kids.
I know. When do they due back?
Either today or tomorrow.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. I was kind of messing with yourself, so you know that.
Gee, thanks. But anyways, thank you for the message. It was really wonderful. Really, really wonderful. It's something that it was amazing because I had questions on the Torah portion, because especially on that, what you taught, I said, what can I get out of this? And when you taught on that, it's like, wow. But thank you so much. It was really wonderful. And I'm grateful for just being here. And for those of you that are just recently moved here, be patient. The word patient means if you're not going through something, we're all going through some stuff in here. But the amazing thing about it is my life has changed so much since I moved here. And my wife's life has changed so much. My little one, Jeanette, has changed so much. Nathan, obviously, with our new daughter. And your life will change if you just submit, like the teaching that they just, let the Father do His will in your life. And He will do some changes in you that you never dreamed or thought or imagined. And for His purposes. As long as we maintain that heart and humbleness before Him and allow Him to change us, for His better. And I've never been in a congregation where literally every day, if I step out of line at work or anywhere I'm at, that the Father puts a mirror before me and says, what are you doing? There's an accountability in this place that I've never experienced before. And I needed that. And if you haven't experienced that yet, you're about to. But, it's wonderful. Thank you, Bill and Beth and the Cloud family, for being obedient. I know I'm like a broken record, keep saying that, but I am so grateful. And thank you again. Blessings to y'all.
Well, thank you. Thank you, sir. That's encouraging. Thank you. That's not why I had him hand you the microphone, by the way, but thank you anyway. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Nate, and it's my birthday tomorrow. But anyway, I was really thankful for how you brought the perspective of we've got to quit looking at our Father's examples of how He works through His people, not always in a negative sense, but the way that we looked at the bitter waters for jealousy, because I always thought about that too. Why is it just the women? But the other thing that popped into my head with that is that us men have a real hard time relating to being the bride of Messiah. And it brings a perspective for me anyway that does our Father does my bridegroom have a reason to be jealous because I've been dabbling or I've been adulterous or one of those things? Because He's coming back for a spotless bride. So in that sense, it's like, okay, well, if in past we've been an adulterous bride through all these years, and now His Spirit is being poured out on all of us to walk in spirit and in truth, then He's beginning to perfect us. So that would mean that if we are that bride, as you were saying, that we may end up going through something that is very bitter, so that the whole world might see that, no, my bride is faithful even to the end. And what that looks like, I don't know, but that's just something that popped in my head. Your thoughts?
Well, that's kind of my point, I guess, today, or at least part of it. I'm not one of those people who believe that just because you're a believer, you're automatically the bride. I think that there are the guests at the wedding. There are the guys that are, waiting outside the door, at the bridal chamber. There seems to be different components at the wedding. And I don't think that you're just automatically the bride just because you've been born again. And that doesn't mean that you're out of the family. Doesn't mean you're not going to get invited to the kingdom. I'm just saying the bride knows the bridegroom. The bridegroom knows the bride. There is an intimacy there, And so I've always equated might not be the proper term, but I've always thought that the bride is synonymous with the priest in that they were set apart from the Levites, who were set apart from the rest of the tribes, And so there's that calling that not everybody answers, And not just to be born again, not just to come into the kingdom, but who's going to know me? Who's going to truly, intimately know me? So all of that is to say that if we want to be the bride, then I think that we have to be willing to submit ourselves to those ordeals, to be found faithful, to be spotless, to be without wrinkle, the way Paul describes it. I think that's just a given. And nobody, no show of hands or anything, but how many of us really feel that we have gotten to that place yet? You know, that's not to say that we know that our sins have been forgiven, okay? But to say that, you know, there's not a wrinkle, to say that there's not something that we still need to deal with. I can't say that, I can't lay claim to that, you know. I believe I'm born again. I believe I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. But I also know that he calls us to draw closer to him. And I believe that the people who are responding to that call, you know, you can disagree with me and you may be dead right, but that's the way I see it. That's who the bride is. And so anyway, all of that is to say, the bride has to be found faithful because it needs to be demonstrated who the bride is. Down front, Alan. Oh, okay, we got it. Oh, yes. Turn it back on.
Okay. I'm not a public speaker, but I feel like there's some thoughts in my mind that I wanted to share. Our family was in that boat last year. Since you guys became a fellowship, we've been live streamers, and then we moved here a couple months ago. And it's been a long, I guess, over 3 years since you started Jacob's Tent. In us praying and waiting to see if this is where the Father would want us to move, because we have 7 kids, 6 with us, and so that would be no small undertaking. And for me personally, I've learned over the last 20 or so years that if he doesn't want me to be somewhere, then that's not where I want to be. And something that you've taught about for years that I've listened to your teachings is to function in your purpose. And that really applies to me, my own personal life. I think our family too, but for me personally, because when I finally listened to him, I don't know how many years ago it was, when I was about 30, and I finally let him into my heart, that's when my life changed. And I don't ever want to go back to that place again where I was when he finally found me, when I found him, and I finally listened to his voice and asked him to come into my life and change me. And he's done that in a lot of ways. I still have a lot more to go, but so I guess over the past 3 years especially, some of the themes that you've talked about last week and then also this week, especially the one today you talked about, do you have in your heart, are you set that you're not going to quit? And for me, he's really given me an opportunity because as soon as you guys formed a group and became Jacob's Tent, I wanted to move here. Like in my heart, I just felt like this is where I wanted to be. But it wasn't just me, it was our family. And especially Jody wasn't ready yet. And so after a lot of time, I realized if he's not there yet, if he doesn't feel like the Father is calling us here yet, then I better just be content with where I'm at and function in my purpose day by day. And that's been really hard because I can't really explain it. It's been a long time since we've really been in a group setting. And when we would come to the Sukkot over the past few years, I would just be so filled up. And the music and just things, I felt like he showed me things during those times that I was so thankful for. And but I realized if my husband wasn't thinking the same thing as me, then I needed to just be quiet and listen. I wasn't listening enough to the Lord, I don't think, so that I could be content with what I had to do every day when I got up and to ask for that daily bread, of what he wanted, what he would supply me and what he wanted for me to do for each day. And one of the things that I never know if I should say that the enemy did this or if he allowed it. I don't know for sure. All I know is I had a health scare where I had something that needed to be, I needed to have tests for it. And it was probably a couple months process before I got some definite answers and found out that it wasn't anything serious or chronic or anything. But during that 8 weeks of time when I was having to wait and not know if, my health was something, basically if there's a chance that I could have something very serious that could affect, my life expectancy. During that time, he used that, I think, to refine me more, almost more than any other time in my entire life, because I would go to the, what ifs. What if I couldn't be here for my kids anymore? What if I couldn't be a mom to them anymore? I have so much to teach them. There's so much that I think he wants me to teach them as their mom, as that position in their life, and then also, as a wife. But I think, however he did it during that 8 weeks, it affected me deeper than I think I've ever been affected by anything with him in my whole life. Because he brought me to the point where, if there was something wrong, do I really believe that he will still be God? Do I really believe that he'll still be the Holy One? Even if, something were to happen to me, or something really horrible were to happen to me, do I really believe that he would still be there? In other words, I think it tested my faith more than I've ever been tested before. And so during that time, I didn't want to quit. I wanted to keep going. I was reminded of what my life was like all those years ago before I knew him. And that's kind of always my standard that I look back to. I don't want to go back to my life before him. And so what you talked about last week and then also this week just really touched to a lot of those things that I've experienced over the past couple years. And so I just wanted to thank you and tell you that I know that you and Beth have said before, it's not about you, it's about him. And I can tell you that I'm thankful that you and she and the people in the congregation have been faithful to get up every day and to do what he has set before you in leading this congregation. And I'm sure there's some Saturdays I just want to lay in bed all day. I'm just tired from the week, and I don't want to face another person, but yet you who lead the congregation and do the different roles, you get up and you do it. And, sometimes on the live stream, I'd be able to tell, you're just tired. Like, you probably just want to lay in bed all day too if you could. Yet you continue to teach, function in your purpose, and because what's the other choice? To not function in your purpose and to be away from him. To me, that's not an option anymore. And so the things that he has taught me personally through you, through things that Beth shares when you're done teaching, and all of that has profoundly affected me personally, and then also our family. And so I guess I just want to tell you thank you for being faithful, and that has been an example for me. I'm sure you guys, you wouldn't be able to have any idea the things that you have said that he has used in my heart to encourage me, to teach me, to remind me of things that I know are true, but sometimes I forget or I just ignore because it's easier. But what you're doing and the people in the congregation, it matters. It really does matter. And so I just want to encourage you to continue on and to thank you for always being there every week in our home when we couldn't be here in person, because it matters, and because I feel like he's working through you, and it really does matter. So I just want to tell you that and to thank you very much.
I guess that means we can't quit. Thank you. That's, and I'll speak for Beth, that's very encouraging. And on behalf of the staff as well. You know, staff works very, very hard. They put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this assembly. So I know that they appreciate that as well. And yeah, some days I just want to lay in the bed. I don't want to get out of the bed. Some of those days have been not too long ago, actually, very recently. I don't want to get up. I don't want to go. I don't want to do it. No. All right. Anyway, so no, but thank you. I really appreciate that. Beth does too. Thank you. It's a blessing. Helps. It really helps. That matters. Thank you. Hey, who's next? Yes.
Right here. Front.
Yes, Harry. Hari, excuse me.
That's okay. Number 6.
Number 6.
Nazarite vows. When we read this during the week, it was interesting. It's in the middle of a lot of really important topics, right? So here we are, all of a sudden in the middle of this. Is a very specific group of folks. So I have 2 questions.
Where are we at in verse?
Second verse. And I have a TLV version. Speak to B'nai Israel and say to them, any man or woman who desires to vow a Nazarite vow to be separate for Adonai. So my first question is, it says man or woman in many of the translations I looked up. I just thought that was interesting. It's very rare, to see man or woman. So that means, so my question was, is that, what would be the Hebrew there? Is it man and or woman can do this?
Yeah,
And so I
it is,
assume
literally is, yes.
All right, so you can't be married and do this?
Can you be married and do this?
Yeah, so if my wife's having a bad day, can she just say, that's it, I'm going to go be a Nazarite now? Serious question.
And okay. So let me make sure I'm understanding.
So can you be married and be a Nazarite?
Can you be married and be a Nazarite?
Right. Or perform the vow and keep the vow.
In terms of, and stay married?
Yeah. So that's my first question.
Well, I think yes would be the answer to that.
Okay.
He's probably not the best example to use for a Nazarite, but Samson was a Nazarite from birth. He married. He married the wrong gal.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know, but
right.
Anyway.
All right.
And then of course Samuel was a Nazarite from birth as well, and he had children.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So after that, everything's about he. The pronouns are all him, he. And to shave their head when they're done. And this is a pretty big deal for a woman back then, right? To shave her head. So that's why it just came to my mind.
Well, and let me interject just very quickly. I may be wrong, but I don't recall the Bible ever talking about a woman specifically who did that. At least it doesn't bring it out, make it very obvious. So. I'm sorry,
Okay.
continue.
No, that's good. So the second question, just in general, was, again, the placement inside of this very important set of, stay holy, rituals that we've been just reading this week. What is the purpose of a Nazarite, right? So there must be a role. Can you be like a baker and be a Nazarite? I'm a weaver and a Nazarite. I'm a Levite and a Nazarite. What is God's purpose for Nazarite? Have we read that before this point in the Torah?
Specifically about the laws of a Nazarite?
Yeah, so for instance, like you said, we want to just be closer to God, and we're now showing it externally in all this, and we are taking vows that God has defined. But what is it that they do?
Well, as far as the mechanics of it, I'll leave that for later. But going back to something I said this morning, now here's my take on it, all right? This is Bill's take. This is what appeals to me or occurs to me as far as why the vows of a Nazarite are inserted in the middle of all this other about being holy, being set apart. And he's talked about the difference, the census that where the priests are numbered. You know, and those are the ones he said are mine. You know, I didn't take the firstborn of Israel. I'm going to take the Levites, they're mine, and I'm going to redeem any of the firstborn that we didn't have enough Levites to account for, because they are going to be in my service. They're set apart unto me, and they're going to serve in the sanctuary and do all these things. And they can't do certain things that all these other people can do that's lawful for them to do. So in that, then you come to the whole, in this Torah portion anyway, if there are certain impurities and certain corruption and contamination because the sanctuary is holy, we can't have those things in the sanctuary. So that's making a point there. So inserted in that is the laws of the Nazir, which as far as I'm concerned say this. He's making the point that it's not just the Levites and not just the sons of Aaron who are called to a high standard. Going back before the golden calf incident, who were to be the priests? The whole nation. Exodus 19, you saw what I did unto the Egyptians, how I bore you unto myself upon eagle's wings. Now, if you will indeed hear my voice and keep my covenant, then you, the sons of Jacob, all of you, then you will be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. So the whole nation was called to be a kingdom of priests. Jumping ahead to what Peter writes, talking about the body of Messiah. You are a royal priesthood. You're a chosen generation that you should show forth the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So I'm very strongly of the mind that it was always his intention that the nation at large be a kingdom of priests. We have a golden calf incident. He chooses Levi to be his priest. But he's reminding, and that's the word I'll use, he's reminding them in the midst of all this talk of holiness and sanctity and the sanctuary and the role of the priest and the different groups in the tribe of Levi, inserted in the midst of that. And just want to remind you that I've called all of you to be holy. And so as far as I'm concerned, the biggest takeaway I have from the laws of the Nazarite is it was a way for a guy from the tribe of Reuben or Dan or Manasseh or whatever to make the declaration, I want to draw as close as those priests do. I want to express that I'm willing to die to the things that are lawful for the rest of the nation to do so that I can have that closer intimacy. Now, that's my takeaway. As far as, the fact that they weren't to drink wine, have anything from the grape, they couldn't touch a corpse, and they couldn't cut their hair because the hair was a consecration unto God. It was, in fact, the word that is translated consecrated in regard to their hair is nezer, and it's the same Hebrew word used for the crown of the high priest. So as he's walking around after taking these vows, his locks are unshorn. It's his crown, more or less. It is a demonstration that he has set himself apart of his own volition to be holy unto the Lord. So it says all those things to me as far as why he couldn't eat grapes or raisins or drink wine and those things. If you compare that to some of the prohibitions that are placed upon the priesthood when they are going to enter into the sanctuary, it's very, very similar. In some cases, it's exactly the same. So that's the connection as far as I'm concerned. And that's why he did it here, because he's talking about the sanctity of the sanctuary, the nation at large. Just kind of a footnote. There are a lot of things in Scripture. You'll be reading along, you're in a certain vein of thought, and all of a sudden, boom, he plants something in there that doesn't seem, at face value anyway, to have any connection to what you've been reading. And to me, those are the flags that say, pay attention. Dig into this. What is this talking about? And I think that's part of what's going on here, which it causes us pause. Wait a minute, what is this here for? start digging into it, and then we glean some of these little, jewels out of it. I don't know if I answered your question or muddy the waters, but that's how I see it.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. All righty. Just wondering, if Yeshua said there would be no marriage in heaven, then how is it that those who will be the bride will marry Yeshua? Does the wedding occur in the new heaven and earth? What he said was, when he was approached by some people who didn't believe in the resurrection, and they went through this whole long thing about a woman who was married to one guy and he died, then she married his brother and he died, and there's no children. They go through all these 7 brothers, there's no children. Whose wife is she going to be? He basically said, here's your problem. You don't understand the scriptures nor understand the power of God, or words to that effect. But what he said was, it's not going to be like you understand it here in the kingdom. So I don't know how marriages that have been established here are supposed to be interpreted there. I do not understand that. I don't know. That's something we'll have to wait till we get into the kingdom to better understand. I know that I will know her, and I know that she'll know me. I just think that at that point in time, our focus is going to be a lot different than it is right now. The marriage that we have, the marriage that you have with your spouse, as important, as sacred as it is in this life, is, and this is how I see it, it's a pattern to go by to help us to appreciate the fact that we have been betrothed to our bridegroom, our heavenly bridegroom. And, the interaction that we have with one another, demonstrating faithfulness to one another, commitment to one another, in the natural teaches us about that commitment we're supposed to have in the spiritual. So obviously there is going to be a marriage supper of the Lamb. And if there's going to be a marriage supper, there must be a marriage. All right? The mechanics of it, how is it going to be, demonstrated and all those kinds of things, I don't know. And as far as I can tell, the scripture doesn't get into the specifics of that. It does say that the bride has made herself ready. She has prepared herself. And so I think that that's what, this existence is about. Those of us who know him and understand these things, we are to be in anticipation of that, preparing ourselves for that. That means getting pruned, going through the ordeals and all the things that we have to endure so that we see all of those spots and wrinkles ironed out and removed. So whether it occurs in the new heaven and earth, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. New Jerusalem would be my guess, since New Jerusalem is adorned as a bride for her husband. But that would be my guess. But that's what it is, a guess. All right, who's next?
Thank you, Bill.
Where are you? Walt, here. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I have to go back to about 2 weeks ago when the slaughter of the children in Texas. The slaughter of the children in upstate New York. You spoke a long time ago about the hunters that will come in when we fall away from Messiah or become lukewarm. I don't remember how long ago you did that, but that's what's happening, I believe, today. When I look at the history of Israel and Judah, Judah was sacrificing their babies to a god of stone or iron, throwing a baby into the fire. Then Judah did it, or Israel, which I don't know which one came first. But they just start destroying our children. Then we go back to the time of Moses, and he gets born, and now we're going to destroy the male babies, and we're going to throw them into the alligators. That's what was swimming in that river. And then we have Yeshua. And they come in, he leaves, goes to Egypt, and Herod sends the soldiers in to kill them with the sword. Now we have America doing the same thing, 60 million babies. And we keep saying we're going to do something, yet we still sit and do nothing. And then comes out the new proclamation to restore the old laws that were on the books. And then they go out and they riot. And one woman had a sign, God bless us with abortion. The whole country's gone mad. But what we have is a system that we left fall apart. We pulled the commandments out of the schools. We took prayer out. We're not allowed to do this. We allow others to do the prayers in school, but our children are not allowed to. When are we going to stand up? When are we going to fight? We are told to walk this walk. And we see evil to stand up against it. You know, I said things a couple of weeks ago, and I knew you wouldn't like them. I did not do it to upset you or the assembly. But Dave and Claire were getting beaten up in an assembly that they support. And I find Orrin, he died, and he had, I believe he died, I'm not too sure.
Okay, you lost me.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to bring it to the point is that we have to be doing something rather than just listen to the cries of Rachel and her children. We have to move forward. When I was a police officer, they were going to hold me in contempt of court because they made an agreement with a person who put 2 cops in a hospital. I was told I didn't have to be at this hearing, but somebody put a note in my box to be there, and I went there. He said, you don't have to be here, officer. I said, what do you mean I don't have to be here? They gave me a conditional discharge, and I flipped out at the judge. I said I would take my badge and my pistol belt and throw it on her blankety blank desk.
Watch it. Be careful.
Yes. And they had the hearing. I was allowed to testify. She had a suit against New York for over $2 million. They were going to let this go immediately, let it slide. First case called, and I was never there at 9 o'clock. I was told to be there at 9, and the case was over. So she told me it wasn't. What it is, it's about us standing up for what we see that is wrong, and how do we do it as an organization, you know?
Well, I'm going to interrupt you there, and I believe that in part we do it by living a set-apart life.
Yes.
You know, I am not going to, as you know, the shepherd of this congregation, encourage anybody to take up the wrong sword, as it were. You know, there's a time that we. There's a time and there is a way. But then, you know, going back to something you said at the very beginning of that, you know, as far as the children and things like that, yeah, unrighteousness abounds, you know, wickedness abounds. And we do have to resist that. We do have to stand up against that. But I'm not going to tell anybody to take on the methods of the world to do it.
No, I agree.
You know, so I'm not really sure what you're referring to that you said a couple of weeks ago that I don't like, and I'm racing through my brain to try to recall. You and I can talk about that privately after we finish, because I don't remember anything about that. But yeah, I agree that we need to stand up to unrighteousness, and one of the ways that we do it is that we come together to be encouraged, to worship, to learn, to be better disciples of the Messiah, with the understanding that in our lives we're going to encounter things that give us the opportunity to make a stand for what's right and what's light. Some people are more, I don't want to use the wrong word here, concentrated on what they're doing, and maybe even a bit more aggressive about it. But as the shepherd of this congregation, you know, I think my job, Beth's job, is to encourage people to be everything that God has called us to be. so that when these situations do arise, and we will encounter them from time to time, that we will be the proper witness, you know. See, I believe that a lot of this stuff that's going on is, well, let me say this very carefully. Somebody might take this the wrong way. I said it a couple of weeks ago about those tragedies, that, as you pointed out, when you remove God from everything, you should expect godlessness. And if you've been in a covenant with God as a nation, and I believe this nation is, he takes that very seriously. So if you're going to break that covenant, then there are repercussions for that. You know, you don't get away with it. And unfortunately, very unfortunately, and sadly, and tragically, when it rains on the just and the unjust. And unfortunately, innocent people get caught up on all of this kind of stuff. So in that situation, where we need to be fighting, to use your words, is to be his hands to apply balm and comfort and some kind of direction to folks who find themselves in the middle of such tragedies. Should people, you know, just walk into a school and be able to do those kinds of things? No, they shouldn't. Does it happen? Yeah. You are a cop for a reason, because there are people who've always broken the law, right? And, well, I'm gonna function in my purpose. You know, my purpose is not to organize marches and petitions and get people with placards and those kinds of things. My purpose, my function is to try to create an environment where people come here, worship, learn, study, become students, become empowered by the Spirit of God, so that when we encounter what life has to throw us, that we can fight in the way that brings him honor, not to brawl.
Well, you know, we lost our honor. We have much shame in our nation now.
I agree.
And honor is small things being restored. The commandments, but what can we do? Put out your flag, American flag. Show honor for those who fought the wars. Honor begins in our house and our way we live our life. We here are living differently than our neighbors, most surely. But I guess what I'm trying to look at is those young children that were slaughtered. About a month ago, my daughter says to me, "Do you remember, Dad, when you used to come home at work?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You always had chocolate pudding, you got me up." I said, "Yes, but I also remember mostly you used to think you were sleeping. I knew you were awake because you were smiling and you'd jump in my arms." We don't see that in the children today. You see it here.
Not all.
No, you see it here, but you're out in the world and you see the attitudes of children. My grandson has to walk around 4 blocks, and I believe it's in Brooklyn or Queens, by the Long Island Railroad to get to the job. He has to carry something. They're not allowed to carry a gun, but the bad boys, they have the guns. So what I'm trying to say, if we can show honor much more than what we have hanging out our flag. It's a start.
Well,
it's not our God.
Not a problem with that. But now let me throw something at you. And not just you, everybody, myself included.
Throw it at me.
No, what I mean is, think about something. As days, weeks, months, and years go by, and what you're describing becomes more and more and more prevalent. That's the trend, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
At some point, it's going to be hard for you and me to identify with this nation because of what it stands for. Not what it used to stand for, but what it stands for. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So there's going to be a certain point we're going to have to make up our mind who we are going to stand with and show honor to.
Yes.
Right?
Agree.
So it could be, Walt, that we get caught in that transition when the process has begun where the kingdoms of this world are becoming the kingdoms of our God and of his Messiah. And so as this nation, moves farther and farther away from him, Do we want to see that? No, we do not. Will we continue to pray for this nation? Yes, we will. But the people of this nation, the leaders of this nation, the congregations of the nation at large, we all have a responsibility, you know. So I feel like we need to focus on us being what we need to be in his eyes. And hopefully that will inspire, encourage other congregations to be what they're supposed to be. And if enough of them can get together, well, there's a place in the scripture where it talks about, you know, if you do what I ask you to do, all of these wonderful things are going to happen. And 5 of you can put 100 to flight. 100 of you can put 10,000 to flight. So what would happen if we had 4 or 5 or 100 congregations functioning in their purpose, doing what they're supposed to do in-house? How could that have an impact outside there? So that's my reasoning. That's my way of thinking, okay? All the while, I've got my eye on what's coming, right? Yes. There's a king that's coming. Mm-hmm. Then he's not coming to Washington. He's not coming to New York. And he's not going to come to Rome, Johannesburg, or Paris, or Tokyo. He's coming back to Jerusalem. So even while I'm concerned about all these things, I pray for my country. I mourn for the tragedies. But at the same time, these are birth pangs. You know that. These are birth pangs, and these birth pangs are telling me to keep an eye on what's coming. So I have to honor that as well. So
yeah, I agree.
I know you do. I know. Well, but anyway, that's where I'm coming from. And I agree with you that there's a lot of problems and a lot of things because we have abandoned our Father in heaven. Yes. All the more reason for you and me and all these people in here to double down our focus on him, you know, and to focus on what he's doing in the earth, because he hasn't gone to sleep, right? He hasn't gone on vacation.
Well, on the day after that slaughter, I had the Fox News on, and I had it on for about 2 hours, and I just kept meditating on everything and thinking of the mothers who lost, Rachel's loss of her children.
That's the tragedy.
That is painful.
Yeah.
And you have taught in the past that he gives us blessings, and now he's taking them away. And when it hits home like this, meaning in our country, we never experienced anything like this.
And I hope we never do.
Yeah,
which is, I said this in the meeting as well. You know, we live in a fallen world. We believe that he's going to protect us, but we also have professional security.
Yes.
To make sure that we do our, you know, what we can. All right. Thank you, Walt. I appreciate it.
Hello, Bill.
Give him praise and glory.
Give him praise and glory. That's what I'm talking about. I want to thank you again for the message. I appreciate the exhortation. Appreciated the admonishment. I really received it well. I just really thank you for what you said. And in that, God, I got a lot in here.
I don't believe you.
You know, you talk about functioning in our purpose, and we hear that. But one of the things I've been working on, and the Lord's been really dealing with me on, and what's really sinking deep in my belly I want to get out, is identity. We really don't know who we are. We say we do, but we don't. We're still allowing the labels of others in the world to attach themselves to us, the things of our past and what we've been through.
For example.
Excuse me?
Example.
There are those who still suffer from shame and guilt. There are those who say, well, I'm divorced, or I'm single, or I'm a plumber, or I'm a this. Your identification is in what you've been through or what you're doing, and not who the Almighty says you are. And until we know who we are in the Beloved, we're not going to function fully in our purpose. We have to know that we are no longer this, but we are now new.
Like a new creation?
All things have passed away. All things have become new. 1 Corinthians 5:17. And so I think that's where this has to start, is knowing who we are in the Beloved, that we are secure in him, because he says, I give you a new name. A case in point.
That's where I was going.
Case in point, Jacob. We call Jacob a supplanter. We call him a deceiver. Actually, his brother did, not the Almighty. Right?
I've heard
tracking?
something about that.
Are you
Yes.
tracking with me? Okay. And so, therefore, that's just one example. Abram became Abraham, Sarai became Sarah, etc., etc. Even Peter, who first he says, yes, you're the Son of God. Then he says, then he denies Messiah. But then Yeshua later tells him, he said, your name is Peter, and upon this rock I shall build my church. So what I'm getting at is we go through this identity crisis that we don't even realize we have. And until we're firmly founded.
Did you turn it off? Did the battery die? Here, come grab this one, Alan, real quick. And I'll see if I can find another one. Hold on. All right, this one says Braden on it, Cody. Dun, 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 dun.
Thank you, sir.
There we go. All right.
Gentleman and a scholar. Heck of a nice guy, too. So where was I? So until we're rooted and grounded in that identity, in Revelation 3, I believe it's chapter 3, says.
Well, there's in chapter 3, but in chapter 2, verse 17, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says. To him that overcomes will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knows, saving he that receives it.
Correct. So that's where I'm at in that scheme of things, on functioning in my purpose. First, knowing exactly who I am in the Beloved, functioning in that identity and not a false identity, because the world will place labels on you. I'm giving away my message. Anyways, so the world will place labels on you, and until you shed those labels, you're not going to move forward. You're still going to be dragging stuff behind you. And we're not identifying with, well, I'm a plumber. Is that what you are? Or is that just what you do? So having the skill of a plumber or an electrician is what you do. But you're ultimately a son or daughter of the King. You follow me? So that's my take on the whole functioning in purpose. First, let us get to know who we are truly in the Messiah before we start going this way or that way. Because then you're following the cloud and following the pillar of fire. You're truly walking in your purpose then. And let's go to the Torah portion now. Oh, I got other stuff, but the Torah portion. I was fascinated.
I told you I didn't believe you.
Okay, real quick. The original or the first mention of Nazar is in Genesis 49:26. In the Hebrew, though, when Jacob speaks the blessing over Joseph, he says he will be distinguished or separated from his brothers. Nun, Zion, Yod, Resh. And contained in that is the exact principles of the Nazarite vow.
Very good.
So I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Very fascinating. So in the Torah portion, what really struck me, and I was intrigued by this, and I drove my wife crazy over this all night.
That's why she's not here now.
Yes, probably, because she said, I'm not going. Are you listening or what? Anyways, Koath, there's not a whole lot about him. And it's intrigued me because he's the second son, which automatically made me think of Jacob and Esau, Jacob and Esau, Isaac and Ishmael, Ephraim and Manasseh, and then Romans 9.
Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel. Yeah, I said the second son. But you said something that just jumped out. You said proximity, and you used that exact word. And that's the word I have in my notes as well. And so what you see in this Torah portion, in the previous Torah portions, we saw preparation and a breaking down. But in this one, we see assignments, i.e. ministry. We see specific duties, assignments. And in 1 Corinthians 12:4, it says, there are diversity of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. Ephesians tells us he's given us some for apostles, some for prophets, some for evangelists, for the equipping of the saints. So I'm looking at this and saying, you mentioned that, not to be envious or jealous over those who are in position, but God has ordained specific and prescribed positions or ministries for everybody.
Amen.
For the building up of the saints, for the whole. Koath, another thing I noticed in there that was interesting, was positioned at the south. The south, the bottom of the cross, the foot of the cross. He's carrying the ark. He's carrying and transporting the presence of the Lord. We are called the temple of the Lord. We carry the presence of the Lord when we go anywhere, to the grocery store, home, wherever. We're carrying that presence. You also alluded to the fact of holiness. So when I'm looking at Koath, I'm saying, this sure looks a lot like a big nugget of a fulfillment that's happening now and yet to come. I don't know if I'm reaching. I said, Crystal, what do you think? Am I spiritualizing this? And she says, I don't know, I have a headache. Because you're driving me crazy. And, and so they're carrying this ark, and I'm thinking, this sure sounds a lot like they're carrying the presence is going with them. Another question is, do you think that ark was very heavy? And I submit it wasn't heavy at all. It was light as a feather because they remained holy in that transporting of that ark. So I'm going all this through my head, and then I discover, I say, well, what did they do to deserve this position? Nothing. Nothing. It was sovereignly prescribed by the Almighty, i.e., grace, our election. Same thing we receive. The Spirit gives gifts to those whom He chooses, gifts and callings.
And who are we to say He doesn't know what He's doing?
And who are we? And you alluded to that. And so I see all this in Koath. I'm thinking, okay, Ephesians 2:8 and 10, not by grace you were saved, but through faith, not that any man should boast. And so
You got sermon notes over there?
I just got notes from my Torah studies. They might as well be a sermon, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
And so Hebrews chapter 10, it says, let us draw near with a pure heart and full assurance, holding fast to our confession of faith, not wavering concerning one another, stirring up love and good works, never forsaking the assembling of ourselves, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another as the day approaches. So I see Koath as an allusion to not only what's to come, a fulfillment of the Gentiles, but also we are called to be priests. And I just see a picture of us. We carry the presence of the Lord where we go. We are to be holy, and like Paul says, to be blameless, like children of God, and a crooked generation. 2 Timothy.
Well, there's
I'm done.
You done? Okay.
I had a lot there.
What are y'all saying over there? I want to go back to what you mentioned initially about the identity. I mean, I think everybody in here knows this, but just to kind of reaffirm, our identity, as you said, should not be in what we were, where we grew up, who were we born to, and all those kinds of things. If we were born again, all those things are passed away. Behold, all things are new. We are a new creation in Messiah. We are no longer, I grew up, Beth and I both grew up in South Georgia. I was raised on grits and greens, and for the longest time, that was my identity. But my identity is not in that anymore. We are the seed of Abraham, and which is why we're feeling this call, responding to this call, to understand more about the roots of where we truly do come from. Not who mom and dad were in that bloodline and that genealogy and, ancestry.com and all that stuff. but who we are in the Messiah, because that's where our identity is.
Right.
So, and so, yeah, it is. I think I've always felt it, and I think it's very important that these key people representing others, as far as I'm concerned, they get a new name that identifies their function. Your name is Peter. You're a little stone, because on this rock I'm going to build my congregation. You're not going to be called Yaakov. You're not going to be called the one whose hand, is up against the heel of his adversary, but you're going to be Yisrael. You are going to Yashar El, to be upright before God, a prince of God. That's your function. That's who you are. So that is emblematic of the fact that we have a role. We have as you said, a role. We all have a ministry, if I want to use that word. But then, what was that? What were you talking about there at the end? Because there was something I was going to say I thought was important. Oh yeah, the Koath.
The Koath, yes.
Okay. I'd never thought about it necessarily in those terms, all right, but I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I do like the idea, he's the second born, as you pointed out. It's not always the firstborn. It's not always the son of the flesh. It's the one that he says is his firstborn, as it were. And it wasn't by birthright. It was, this
sovereign selection.
It was a selection,
right.
All right? But I want to add this to what you said, because this comes up later. They were in the south, right next to the camp of Reuben. And that's where Dathan and Aviram come from.
Right.
And so Koath and Reuben, Korah specifically, they found misery loves company, the old saying. So Reuben is a tribe that, feels like, well, that should be our birthright, that should be ours, etc. And it finds a sentimental ear in Koath among Korah. So even though there is that selection and that gift and that ministry, we still have to be very, very, very careful of who we associate with, who we listen to, who we allow to come in, the word that we allow to come into our ear, into our heart. Correct. Because it can disrupt and undermine that calling as well.
So would 2 Timothy 2:20 and 21 fit?
Read it.
But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also wood and clay, some for honor and some for dishonor. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself of the latter, he will be a vessel of honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work.
I just know I don't want to be one of dishonor.
Correct.
So we'll focus on that cleansing part.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Utilized gematria to study this week and found this. Gershom 231, Merari 205, Koath 177 equals 613. Any thoughts? Respectfully, no. Now, I do want to explain to folks who may not know what gematria is. In Hebrew, and this is true in Greek as well, before there were Arabic numerals that we use every day, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In Hebrew and Greek, the Hebrew characters would also double as symbols for values. Aleph is 1, Beth is 2, Gimel is 3, Dalet is 4, Hey is 5, and on down through the 22 letters. And so in rabbinic studies for a long time, they would be reading something and they would see not only a functional relationship between two different words, like the word for ish, the word ish is a man or a husband, isha is a woman or wife, and they would see relationship in not just what those words meant, but also numerical values. And so they get into a lot of that kind of stuff, and people call that gematria. There is a potential hazard in getting into those things, because at one point it can cross over from being, isn't that interesting, to becoming trying to predict the future and get into all kinds of things based on numbers. Okay? So I tend not to get into that too much in the capacity that I now serve, because that can get you off into the weeds and, I don't know how you are about pulling weeds, but it's not my favorite thing to do. So, and I don't like looking for things in the weeds too often. There is something to gematria, but let's just make sure we're careful with that. So I'm only saying that because I read the question. As far as what you're pointing out, I really didn't know that. I don't have any thoughts because I really don't know what the impact of that would be. So that's why I'm not commenting. It's just because I don't know. Who's next? Jerry.
About the Nazarite vow, as of today, there's the literal part of that cannot be done because there's no altar, correct? But the spiritual
That's my understanding.
is very much the thing that we need to look at, correct?
I would say yes. Because that's not bound to an altar, that altar anyway. Because and what you're referring to is I cannot, take the vows of a Nazarite, abstain from wine and things pertaining to the grape, from touching a corpse, grow my hair and not let it be cut, and then when the vow is fulfilled, cut my hair off and take it to the altar for it to be burned. Right? But I can consecrate myself. I can say, Father, I want to follow you and I want to draw nearer to you. And I can say, even to the point that I will abstain from things that might be lawful for others, but I don't want to do that. Or I'm going to steer clear of those things. So yes, that's eternal. And I think that, well, I better not say that. That would open a can of worms. But there's a lot more to the Torah than just things that pertained to a duty that was centered around a sanctuary being present. Because this body is now the temple of God, right? And the things that we do to cleanse this temple of things that are impure and that would be corruptible, those are the things that he's talking to us about now. This is apples and oranges, but there are a lot of people who are, and I was one of them at one point in time, fascinated with the whole idea of the temple. When is the temple going to be rebuilt? How many red heifers have we had since 1988? Because every time a red heifer would pop up in Time or Newsweek or on the news, time to build the temple. And then they would found a brown hair. Oh, we can't do it yet. People are still fascinated by that, and people are still looking at those things. And all the while, Jerry, I think this is the temple he's working on. This is the one he's trying to work on. And this spiritual house that's comprised of all these multitudes of living stones that he's fitting together, I really think that's the house he's working on. And so as it pertains to that house, then we're not bound by that, what that altar represented to the vows of a Nazarite. We can still consecrate ourselves. We can still abstain. We can still say, I'm going to die to even a little bit more, And it not just grape juice and not just, the corpse thing, attitudes, words, those kinds of things. I don't know who's next, but keep your eye on Miss Amy back there in the back, okay? You got it? All right. Yes, sir. Tell me your name again. We met last week or week before, but.
It's Lewis.
It sounded like you said it's Slust. But you said it's Lewis.
Yes,
right.
it's
Okay.
Lewis.
All right.
So this Torah portion kind of hit me really hard. You brought it home really hard today, even though I think, you were worried about bringing it home. I want to let you know you did, and I think a lot of other people realized it today too. But what it made for me was made something else really hard. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I don't want to take up a whole bunch of time. But in 2012, I was called to preach at a little Baptist church, Glory Land Baptist Church in Dallas, Georgia. In
Dallas, is that what you said?
Dallas,
okay.
Georgia. Then I got too close there, preached too much. People were giving
All right, I'm sorry. Too close to
God.
Okay. All right.
I got too close to my calling, too close in heart next to him, and ran like a scalded dog. Do what? And so we ran to a church, a much larger church in Ackworth, Georgia, where we thought we would just blend into the back, or at least I did. She wasn't too much, I didn't let her, this is my wife Annie, by the way. I didn't let her know too much of what went on in my heart and in my spirit at that point. We were there for about 3 months, and then we were asked to do youth ministry. And I'm like, Lord, I'm running away from you. Please stop getting me to do these things. So we started the youth program there. And then I got a job offer to move to Florida, where I was going to make more money. And so we did, because I took it as an opportunity to run. I did not know.
You ran toward the water.
Yeah.
Have you not read that story?
We actually lived in the middle of the state, a lot of humid, not much water. So then got off into a lot of alcohol, a lot of trying to hide from God as best I could. Never worked, by the way. But then we came back to Georgia. And when we did, that's when I know that I had been running. Well, I continued to run. Now I was ashamed. Now I was guilty. Now I wasn't going to come near him because I didn't feel like he wanted me any longer. So fast forward, July 12th, 2020. I gave my life to Yeshua HaMashiach that day. July 13th, now mind you, back here getting this calling, leading people to Christ in a Baptist church, people getting saved, as far as I know it was genuine, and I wasn't. And on July 13th, 2020, the Ruach HaKodesh spoke to me reading 2 Timothy chapter 2, which Joffrey, I believe is your name, right, just alluded to, which just gave me chills all up and down my spine when he said that. But it was overwhelming. He said, you're going to be uncomfortable, but don't worry, it'll all be over soon. It's not over. Soon is relative. It's a relative term. It does not mean tomorrow. We don't know what it means. The issue that stuck with me, then I was then an associate pastor at the church, and then it was called The Church in Dallas. It was actually the same little building that I got the calling to be preached, to go into the ministry, but it was a different name now. Well, then things did get uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. Really, when a friend of mine, Todd Maloney, you may know him, Dana Maloney, they actually came with us last weekend for Shavuot. Okay. And there are Torah teachers. We asked them to teach us Torah. And he was the first person I'd ever heard say Yeshua. And I looked and I said, what is this Yeshua? And he's like, oh, that's Jesus in Hebrew. And I'm like, oh, you got to tell me more, and you got to tell me more, and you got to tell me more. Well, then I got up to preach, and I said, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, well, the lead pastor at the church said, don't ever. He said, don't. I got up on stage to preach after hearing that, researching and figuring out what it was, what his name was. It was so intimate, like in my spirit, I felt it. And so I got up and I said, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, that's what I prayed in that day. Well, the lead pastor of that church said, don't ever say that again. Things started to get more uncomfortable and more uncomfortable and more uncomfortable, and they're still uncomfortable today. So here was my next uncomfortable situation. For 3 weeks, Yah was telling me, you need to do something. And me and my wife have ran a ministry for a year now. It'll actually be a year tomorrow, called Repenting Hearts Ministries. We've ran it out of our house. And Yah has really given me this overwhelming spirit for the past 3 weeks Like, you have to do something on Shabbat with the ministry. I didn't know what it was until last week, which was we need fellowship, even so more as you see the day approaching. And so we came here last week for Shavuot, and we felt like, I talked to the kids on the way home. I said, guys, is this where you want to go? Is this what you want to do? And it's an overwhelming yes from the whole family. Well, then my son gets an opportunity to go on an all-star baseball team that's going to take up Shabbat and Sundays. And I said,
Dun, 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 dun.
oh, yeah. And I said, in the most loving way I could understand how to do what was needed to be done, I took the wave offering last week and I said, things are going to be a little bit new around here, and we're going to go to Joshua chapter 24 and verse 15, and it's going to be, in my house, we will serve the Lord. And so I said, I will not pay for him to play baseball on Shabbat, for sure. He could play on Sunday, but he's not going to play on Saturdays. We had this whole family argument. She's looking down right now, but we did. And I stood where I was going to be. I took that vow and that wave offering last week, and it meant something. And it meant a lot to me. If it meant nothing to anyone else, it meant a lot to me. That was, I'm not going to go backwards. You know, what, like 25 seconds after I give this wave offering, Lord, I'm yours. Okay, now we're going to go backwards. We're not going to keep Shabbat. We're going to go play baseball. No, that's not going to happen. Well, the next thing, it's about 10 o'clock at night. I'm sleeping or trying to go to sleep. They both come home and they're like, okay, we've decided that we're going to go to Jacob's tent on Shabbat. We all agreed as a family that's what we're going to do. We like it there. If the team doesn't let me play, I'm going to be upset. This is my son. I'm telling you what he said. I'm going to be upset, but we're going to go. And my wife had this overwhelming thing that she's like, I keep the 10 commands and one of them is Shabbat, is what she told me. So I said, okay, well now, Bill, today, again, I am uncomfortable and I need a little help. So we now have a situation where I still will teach on Sundays with our ministry. But you said something today that I haven't been able to get out of my head. If it's growing, but it's not producing fruit, then it's time to prune it. How? So our ministry is growing. Our ministry is growing within our family. Like, if I could give you a slide reel of where our family was before we started the ministry, it's night and day. It's 180 degrees. God has done amazing things just within our home, just within our hearts. This is my mom here. This is my little brother. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Those things are huge for me. But am I reaching? Am I seeing fruit? Is it actually growing?
How long did this start?
How long did
how long you been doing this, did you say?
A year. It'll be a year tomorrow. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find something here to read.
While you find that, if also in Timotheus chapter 3, it says you should not be a new convert. Well, the Ruach spoke to me while reading that, and I don't know why y'all always takes me to Timothy. Every time I have a problem, my Bible will fall open to 1st and 2nd Timothy. But he said, you can't teach on Shabbat yet.
Well, I'm not going to tell you that you should or shouldn't, okay?
No, I know that, yeah.
But, you know, I will say this, that, well, you can't lead people where you haven't been.
That's
Okay?
gotcha.
You can't disciple people in a situation that you've never experienced. All right? So I would avoid that. Do you understand what I'm saying? But it's not for me to sit in this seat and say, God called you to do this, God didn't call you to do that. You know, because there's a lot of people who there is a process, you know, there is a learning period, there has to be a growth period so that you can lead people where you've been. And you can, and when you teach, it's not from the head, it's from the heart. You know, it's with conviction, with passion. I do think that there is wisdom in giving things time, you know. But now as it relates to the growth aspect of things, you said you've been doing this a year, all right? As far as when it's time for something to be pruned or even, you know, cut down, the thing that came to my mind is the parable of the fig tree. And he came looking for fruit for a couple of years and he didn't find any. And so he says, give it, well, actually it's 3 years. And so he said, let's give it another year. So point being is, I don't know that anything should be rushed. Sometimes things have to be fertilized. Some things, you know, sometimes things have to be watered. You know, sometimes it takes time. So I wouldn't rush into the pruning aspect of that. Besides, when it needs to be pruned, he has his way. Okay? But back to the other. Now, that's something you and your wife need to be thinking about, praying about, seeking the Father on. Because you can't lead people where you haven't been. You know, and there's probably a lot of things, you know, that you want to learn better and understand better so that you can share these things. You know, does that mean you can't be a witness? No, that's not what that means. Okay? But whether or not God called you is not for me to say, you know. But like you said, soon is relative.
Yeah.
You know, just because he tells you something today doesn't mean it's today he wants you to do it.
Right.
Or that today is the day it's all going to come to pass. You know? So I am, not knowing you any better than I do, I am just going to say, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay? You and your family are welcome. We hope that this will be a place that you find some peace and some sense of community and fellowship and build relationships with, and hopefully learn. And not learn just by sitting, you know, listening to a guy flap his gums for an hour and a half every Shabbat, but learn in other ways, you know. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Okey-doke?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lewis. And what was your wife's name again?
Annie.
Annie? Welcome, Annie. All right, go take the microphone over to Miss Pernack real quick, okay? She doesn't get to be in here a lot because she does the nursery. She's with your little ones all the time. So she misses out on a lot. So I'm gonna let her jump to the front of the line. She got a fast pass today. Run, Forrest, run. At least trot.
Well, I couldn't do the nursery without my awesome staff. I have I think we're upwards of almost 20 members of the congregation that are helping in the nursery. So we really appreciate all them. Yeah. As you were talking about identity, and then this morning about not giving up, it really, I find this repetitive theme in my life of the Lord trying to drop into it what my identity actually is. I guess it didn't really become a theme until I started following Torah. And I felt like the Lord really challenged what my identity was. Because before I found Torah, my identity, I felt like, was constantly wrapped up in what I was doing. I don't remember who mentioned that.
Joffrey mentioned that.
Joffrey mentioned it, yeah. So, you know, I was involved in theater, and I was a singer, and did acting, and, you know, whatever. The bad decisions I made, was that my identity, right? So I was struggling with that identity, and I think that might be one of the biggest lies that the devil has done within the church is stolen our identity. Because, like we've all said and all know, that our identity is royalty, children of the Most High. And what was interesting is, as we came into Torah, what brought us into Torah, at least brought my heart into Torah at the beginning, was I had begun to cry out to the Lord as a parent. My daughter was probably 5 at the time, and I said, Lord, I don't want her making the same stupid mistakes I made. I don't want her walking down that road. I was raised in the church. I was there every time the doors were open. My parents were godly people. My dad was a deacon. You know, my mom was involved in everything with church, and they instilled God's scripture in me constantly. And yet, I rebelled for a good 7 years of my life. And so as my child was getting a little older, I was thinking, Lord, we're getting to that point of, I don't want her going down any bad roads as her life progresses. And obviously we all make mistakes and we're gonna go down bad roads, but occasionally. But that's when he brought me to Torah. And he started showing me this framework of living life. And I completely lost my train of thought. So I guess what I came to understand was that what he gave us is our identity. And the way he gave us that identity, how is he going to instill that identity? He's going to instill it by how we behave. Like, we're already sons and daughters of the Most High. Like, our identity hasn't changed. God's people are that. They are God's people. But we don't feel that way. And so we go and eat with the pigs, you know, like the prodigal son. We take off and we go eat with the pigs. We don't behave like sons and daughters of the Most High because we don't feel like that. And so I believe God's framework of how we eat, how we should dress, the festivals we should be observing, these are the things that actually give us that sense of who we are and what our identity is, so that we actually behave that way. You know, we draw people around us that are like that, and we're able to show that to others. So I guess I just wanted to encourage parents specifically in that we need to persevere, because what we're doing is instilling God's identity in our children through how we walk out this life, through the festivals that we're doing, through how we eat, how we dress, and what we value. And if we stop, if we give up, our children are going to lose their identity again, and they won't know who they are, and they will start going and eating with the pigs again, and they will start asking, who am I? What am I identified by? When all along, Yehovah is giving us that identity. So we just need to grab a hold of it and hold on for dear life, because it will determine how we live out that life and whether we get those blessings. So anyway, that's all.
Well, thank you. I'll just tag this onto the end if I may, because it has something to do about the walk. And I've taught this for a long time. You know, when Jacob was given that new name, Israel, he didn't just get a new name. He got a distinctive walk that identified him as Israel. You would know who Israel was by how he walked. All right? And so playing into or connecting it to what you were talking about just now. And that is part of our identity and how we walk. But going beyond what we eat, what we celebrate, things like that, which are all very important, and it is indicators of who we are. But as we do those things, it is also going to be indicators of who we are and who we serve by how we love one another. I think somebody told us that this is how the world will know that you're my disciples. how you treat one another, how you love one another. And so that is also a very, very important element. We do it every week. We remind ourselves and we proclaim every week, at least every week, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your strength, and another that is like unto it. You shall love your neighbors as yourself. On these two instructions hang all of those other things. So our identity is also, and must also, recognize that it's tied up in that we don't react or shouldn't react the same way everybody else reacts. We shouldn't respond in the same way that everybody else responds, because we have these parameters, this framework, I think was the word you used, that teaches us discipline, that teaches us to be discipled. And so as we go through those things teach us about these weightier matters. So I agree with you. It's extremely important that as parents and grandparents that we continue to instill these things in our children and our grandchildren. That we should not assume that they understand all of these things. Because I grew up in church too. I was there every time the doors opened, but that's because my mama made me. True. You know, I got involved a little bit, and I was this and I believed that, but I didn't really, it wasn't a personal thing at that point in time. So let me say this, since the young people have just come in. This is for you. It is at a certain age, I'll put it that way, at a certain age, the responsibility is going to transition from mom and dad and grandmom and granddad to you, to own this for yourself. Moms and dads and grandparents are training you, instilling these things, teaching these things to you, demonstrating these things to you, because that's what our responsibility is. But there will come a day, and for some of you, that day isn't too far off, that responsibility will then transition to you, and you'll have to be the one who bears that responsibility. You'll have to be the one who identifies with the Messiah because of your relationship with him directly, and not one that is coming through mom and dad or a grandparent. Some of you are already at that age. So, thank you, Amy. I appreciate that reminder. Thank you very much. How we walk matters, because somebody's always watching. Tina, I'm going to go with you. You're going to be the caboose today. And I mean that in all the best ways.
Well, thank you. It seems like Abba wants us really to know today who we are in him. 1 Corinthians 4 says, you have become kings, and that all without us. How I wish that you really have become kings, so we might be kings with you together. 2 Peter, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. So we know we're kings and priests, we're royalty. Then we go to Revelation 5, and the English version translates it like that. You have made them to be a kingdom and priest, to serve our God. They will reign upon the earth. But when you look in Greek, it says actually something slightly different. It says, you have made them to be kings and priests to serve our God, and they reign upon the earth. So that means we are already kings and priests, and we are already supposed to be walking in that calling. We're supposed to function in that calling. We're supposed to reigning and ruling with Messiah today already, not tomorrow, not in 1,000 years, today. We really need to realize who we are. And I don't know, for years I have struggled myself with that idea. How can I be, especially being a woman and being raised in church and, you know, always told, you're a woman, you have to be quiet, you can't say nothing, and you cannot really serve him except serving your husband and your children. But then realizing, hold on a second, he called all of us to be a kingdom of priests. That includes me too. That includes Amy, that includes Beth, that includes everyone. We're all kings and priests, and we're supposed to serve in that capacity. And we're not serving just each other. We didn't come to see each other today, right? We came to see him. We came to serve him. And as kings and priests, that's our obligation. We are servants of the Most High and then of each other. And then that's how we're supposed to walk. That's how we're supposed to function. That's what functioning in my purpose means to me. We are already kings and we're supposed to walk that way. And then the second thing that I wanted to share is, you talked about pruning this morning. I've been raised in church, never understood the pruning. For years, I've been asking Abba, show me what this pruning is all about. How is it working? And then a few years back, we got a property, and a neighbor of ours came and said, you have grapes on the property. Where? There's no grapes. Well, it was in a rough shape. It needed lots of cleaning. And as we were cleaning, we discovered the grapes. They were muscadines. Very old, established grapes. But nobody has done anything to those grapes in years. These branches grew, I don't know how many feet, Wally? 25, 50 feet? Into the trees. Nobody has pruned them ever. There was a grape here, a grape there, maybe a grape down there, but they really were not producing any fruit. But we had 3 long rows of grapes that did not produce any fruit. And so we started pruning. And for the first time in my life, it finally clicked. Well, if he doesn't prune me or us, we're gonna be like those grapes. We're gonna ensnare everything around us and choke everything to death, but will not produce any fruit. Those muscadines were ensnaring all the trees around them, and all of the trees were dying, literally dying. The muscadines were green. They had long, nice branches, no fruit. But all of the trees around them were dying because they were literally choking the life out of these trees. But when we started pruning, we started to see something different. The first year after the pruning, now the pruning was heartbreaking. Those grapes were weeping for days. And I mean, you could literally see tears dropping to the floor. It was heartbreaking to see that. But what happened the year after was all of the grapes were covered in fruit. And you started seeing trees recovering around them. You started seeing all of these oak trees, beautiful, beautiful oak trees, all of a sudden have leaves. They turned green all of a sudden again. They had life in them again, just because somebody took the shears and said, enough is enough. We're gonna prune this nonsense and we're gonna take care of this now. And the muscadines produced fruit. So all of a sudden it started clicking. Hold on a second. If he prunes me, he prunes us. We will be producing fruit. We will be walking like the kings and the priests, like he called us to be. And we will stop choking the life out of everybody around us. We will be walking like him. But we have to allow him to do the surgery, and it's gonna be painful.
Amen. Growth is good, but if it doesn't produce the fruit, then it really doesn't serve a purpose. So thank you, Tina. I appreciate that. I want to say this as well, in to something you said. You know, when I hear the term royalty, we're royalty. You know, we need to be reminded that it might be this way in other cultures, but in a biblical culture, royalty, it doesn't mean privilege. It's not synonymous with privilege. Royalty is synonymous with responsibility. And so as kings and priests, a royal priesthood, we have a responsibility. What is that function? To show forth the praises of him who has called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. We have a responsibility. I want to read you real quick. Mark and Tammy McClendon were joining us earlier for the service in their congregation down in Loosedale. And so Mark just sent me a text, and I wanted to read just a little part of it, and then we'll close in prayer. But he was just talking about, he was watching the message. I'm amening, coughing and sneezing. But very pleased to see where the Father guided you today. He said, pruning is for growth even though it hurts. Spirit, soul, and body. But the alternative to being pruned is the axe being laid to the root. I thought that was worth reading for us to just kind of let that resonate. The alternative to being pruned is the axe being laid at the root. Matthew chapter 3. So on that positive note, we will call it a day. Just an admonition, for us to remember who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. Amen? Liam. Yes, you. You're the only Liam I know in this room. I have need of you, sir. Will you come to the stage? And as Liam is coming to the stage, will everybody just stand? Let's remember all these different congregations that are battling things, sickness and other things. Let's remember all of our brothers and sisters here. Encourage one another. Pray for one another. Help one another where we can. Let's don't be discouragers. Let's be encouragers. So I am going to encourage you, sir, to pray for all of us as we leave today. Will you do that, please? Hold that mic close to your mouth, all right?
Okay. Thank you, God, for this wonderful day and all of the great people who come here, and let us all go in peace. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen. To the point. Got it done. Everyone have a great afternoon and evening. Be safe, be blessed. We'll see you here next Shabbat, 11 a.m. Blessings.